The hospital waiting room buzzed with chaos. A cacophony of coughing, whispered fears, and the sharp beep of monitors. Emily Carter, 28, sat rigid, her fingers laced tightly with Sarah Bennett's, her girlfriend of 3 years. In that moment, as the doctor's refusal shattered their world, Emily's heart pounded with a rage she'd never known. It was supposed to be a routine visit. Sarah, a freelance graphic designer with a laugh that could light up a room, had been battling a persistent cough for weeks. Emily, a rising star at a Chicago law firm, insisted on the appointment, dragging Sarah to Mercy General Hospital on a chilly October morning. They'd walked in hand, oblivious to the storm brewing ahead. The waiting room was packed, elderly patients clutching walkers, a mother soothing a crying child, and a man in a suit tapping furiously at his phone. Emily barely noticed them, her focus on Sarah, who leaned against her shoulder, pale and exhausted. Sarah Bennett. A nurse called, her voice cutting through the din. The couple stood, Emily's arm around Sarah's waist, guiding her toward the exam room. But as they approached, Dr. Margaret Hensley, a middle-aged woman with a crisp white coat and a pinched expression, blocked their path. Her eyes flicked to their joined hands, and her lips curled into something between a sneer and a frown. "I'm sorry, Dr. Hensley said, her voice loud enough to draw stares. "I don't treat people like you." The words landed like a slap, sharp and deliberate. Sarah froze, her breath catching, while Emily's grip tightened, her nails digging into her palm. "Excuse me." Emily's voice was low, dangerous. The room seemed to still, eyes turning toward the confrontation. Sarah's cough rattled in her chest, a reminder of why they were there. But Dr. Hensley's gaze was cold, unyielding. "I have the right to refuse service based on personal beliefs," she said, crossing her arms. "Find another doctor." The humiliation burned. Sarah's face flushed, her hazel eyes wide with shock and hurt. Emily felt her own anger rising, a tidal wave threatening to break. "You're refusing to treat her because we're together," she demanded, stepping forward. The nurse hovered awkwardly, glancing between them, while whispers rippled through the waiting room. A man in the corner muttered something under his breath, and a woman clutched her purse tighter, as if love could be contagious. Sarah tugged at Emily's sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's just go." But Emily couldn't move, couldn't let this slide. Not when Sarah's health was at stake. Not when the woman she loved was being reduced to a spectacle. "No," Emily said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "We're not going anywhere." Dr. Hensley turned away, dismissing them with a wave. "Next patient," she called, as if they were nothing. Emily's vision blurred with fury, but Sarah's hand, warm and trembling, anchored her. They left the exam area, the weight of every stare pressing down on them. Outside, in the hospital's sterile hallway, Sarah sank onto a bench, her cough worsening. Emily knelt beside her, brushing blonde strands from her face. "We'll find someone else," she promised, her voice fierce with conviction. "And I'm not letting this go." Emily's mind raced as they waited for another doctor. She wasn't just a lawyer, she was a fighter, forged in courtrooms and late-night case files. Sarah, her anchor, deserved better than this. As Sarah rested her head against Emily's shoulder, Emily's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about a doctor's refusal. It was about dignity, love, and justice. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying over the screen as she began digging into Dr. Hensley's background. What she found in the next few hours would change everything. By late afternoon, Sarah had been seen by a kind, overworked resident who prescribed antibiotics for a suspected infection. But Emily's focus was elsewhere. She'd uncovered that Dr. Hensley wasn't just any physician, she was a contractor. Not a full-time hospital employee, hired through a staffing agency. Her record was spotty, with complaints of unprofessional conduct buried in online reviews. Emily's legal instincts kicked in. She made calls, sent emails, and pulled every string she could reach. Sarah, still weak but stubborn, insisted on helping, her graphic design skills turning up a damning social media post where Dr. Hensley had ranted about traditional values in healthcare. As the sun dipped below Chicago's skyline, Emily sat in a coffee shop across from the hospital, her laptop open, Sarah beside her sipping tea. "You're terrifying when you're like this," Sarah said, a faint smile breaking through her fatigue. Emily grinned, but her eyes were sharp. "Good," she replied, "because I'm just getting started." The next morning, Emily marched into the hospital's administrative office, armed with evidence. She met with the hospital's legal counsel, a stern woman named Ms. Rivera, who listened as Emily laid out the case. Dr. Hensley's public refusal violated hospital policy, state anti-discrimination laws, and basic human decency. Emily's voice never wavered, though her heart raced. She presented screenshots, witness statements from the waiting room, and a formal complaint signed by Sarah. Rivera's expression shifted from skeptical to grim as she reviewed the documents. By noon, the hospital had launched an investigation. Dr. Hensley was called in, her face pale as she faced the board. Emily and Sarah waited in the lobby, their hands clasped. Sarah's cough was quieter now, but her eyes still carried the weight of yesterday's humiliation. "Do you think this will change anything?" she asked softly. Emily squeezed her hand. "It has to." Hours later, the call came. Dr. Hensley's contract was terminated, effective immediately. The hospital issued a public apology, and Emily's complaint was forwarded to the state medical board. As they left the hospital, Sarah pulled Emily into a hug, her voice thick with emotion. "You did this for me." Emily shook her head, her throat tight. "I did it for us." But the story wasn't over. Emily knew this was just one battle in a larger war. She and Sarah returned home, their small apartment a sanctuary of warmth and love. Over dinner, they talked about the future, about fighting for others who face the same prejudice. Emily's firm was already buzzing about the case, and Sarah was sketching ideas for a campaign to raise awareness about discrimination in healthcare. Their love, tested by fire, had only grown stronger. The next day, Emily filed a formal grievance with the state, ensuring Dr. Hensley's actions would follow her. Sarah, feeling stronger, posted their story online, her words raw and honest. The post went viral, sparking a wave of support and outrage. People shared their own stories, and soon, Emily was inundated with messages from others seeking justice. She looked at Sarah, her heart swelling. This was their fight now, together. As the weeks passed, Emily and Sarah became advocates, their story a beacon for change. They spoke at community events, their voices carrying the weight of their experience. The hospital implemented new training programs, and Emily's firm took on pro bono cases for others facing discrimination. Sarah's health improved, her laugh returning, brighter than ever. They faced setbacks, hateful comments, legal hurdles, but their love was unyielding, a force no prejudice could break. In the quiet moments, when it was just them, Emily would trace the lines of Sarah's face, marveling at her strength. "We're doing this," Sarah would whisper, her eyes shining. And Emily would nod, knowing they'd face whatever came next. Hand in hand. The Chicago wind whipped through the streets as Emily and Sarah stepped out of their apartment, their breath visible in the crisp autumn air. It had been a week since the hospital incident, and while Sarah's cough was fading, the sting of Dr. Hensley's words lingered like a bruise. Emily, ever the protector, hadn't stopped moving her mind, a whirlwind of legal strategies and righteous anger. Their small apartment, a cozy haven on the city's north side, was filled with the remnants of their fight, legal pads scribbled with notes, a laptop glowing with research, and Sarah's sketchbook, where she'd begun designing a logo for their new advocacy project. The viral post Sarah had written about their experience had exploded, amassing thousands of shares and comments. Some were hateful, calling them names Emily refused to repeat, but most were supportive, with strangers sharing their own stories of discrimination. It was overwhelming, but it fueled Emily's resolve. That morning, they sat at their kitchen table, a plate of half-eaten toast between them. Sarah's blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, her hazel eyes scanning her phone. "Another interview request," she said, her voice soft but steady. "A local news station wants to talk about what happened." Emily paused, her coffee mug halfway to her lips. "You don't have to do it," she said, searching Sarah's face. "Not if it's too much." Sarah shook her head, a spark of defiance in her eyes. "I want to. People need to know this isn't okay." Emily reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Sarah's courage, quiet but fierce, was one of the reasons Emily had fallen so hard for her 3 years ago, when they'd met at a mutual friend's art gallery opening. Sarah's laugh had drawn Emily in, and her heart had kept her there. The interview was scheduled for that afternoon at a small studio downtown. As they rode the L train, Sarah leaned against Emily, her head resting on her shoulder. The city blurred past gray buildings, flickering lights, and the hum of life. Emily's mind drifted to the first time they'd ridden this train together, giddy and nervous on their first date. She'd known then that Sarah was different, that their love was worth fighting for. At the studio, the reporter, a young woman named Lena with a warm smile, greeted them kindly. The cameras rolled, and Sarah recounted the hospital incident, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Emily sat beside her, her jaw tight, ready to jump in if needed. "It wasn't just about me," Sarah said, her eyes locking with the camera. "It's about everyone who's been told they don't deserve care because of who they are." Emily's chest swelled with pride, but also with a nagging fear. This exposure would make them targets, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. After the interview, they walked along Lake Michigan, the water glittering under the late afternoon sun. Sarah stopped, turning to Emily. "Are we doing the right thing?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the waves. Emily pulled her close, her arms a shield against the world. "We're doing what's necessary," she said. "For us. And for everyone else." Back at the apartment, Emily dove into her next steps. She'd connected with a local advocacy group, Equality Illinois, who offered legal and media support. They were building a case not just against Dr. Hensley, but against systemic bias in healthcare. Emily spent hours on the phone, her voice calm but firm, coordinating with lawyers and activists. Sarah, meanwhile, worked on their campaign's branding, her sketches vibrant and bold. "This is our fight," Sarah said one night, her pencil pausing over a drawing of two clasped hands. "But it's bigger than us." The backlash came swiftly. Hate mail flooded their inbox. and Emily's firm received anonymous calls questioning her professionalism. One night, as they lay in bed, Sarah's phone buzzed with a vicious message. "You're disgusting. Stay out of our hospitals." Sarah's face crumpled, and Emily pulled her close, whispering, "They don't get to win." But inside, Emily's fear grew. She could handle courtroom battles, but this was personal, a direct attack on the woman she loved. The next day, Emily met with her firm's senior partner, Mr. Grayson, a gruff man with a reputation for winning tough cases. He'd heard about the hospital incident and offered to take on their case pro bono. "This is bigger than one doctor," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You're exposing a system that's failed too many people." Emily nodded, her resolve steeling. She spent the afternoon drafting a formal complaint to the Illinois Department of Public Health, detailing Dr. Hensley's actions and the hospital's initial inaction. Meanwhile, Sarah attended a support group for LGBTQ+ patients, sharing her story with others who'd faced similar discrimination. One woman, a trans nurse named Carla, told Sarah about being denied care for a broken arm because of her identity. "We need people like you and Emily," Carla said, her voice fierce. Sarah came home that night, her eyes bright with purpose. "We're not alone," she told Emily, and they spent hours planning their next steps, their apartment filled with the quiet hum of determination. As the days passed, their story gained traction. A national news outlet picked it up, and Emily and Sarah were invited to speak at a rally for healthcare equality. The event was set for the following week, and Emily felt a mix of nerves and excitement. She looked at Sarah, who was sketching a poster for the rally, her tongue poking out in concentration. "We're really doing this," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah smiled, reaching for her hand. "Together," she said. The rally loomed large, a chance to amplify their voices. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the fight was far from over. Dr. Hensley's termination was a victory, but the system that allowed her actions to go unchecked was still intact. As they prepared for the rally, Emily and Sarah knew they were stepping into a larger battle, one that would test their love, their strength, and their belief in justice. The rally was a sea of color rainbow flags waving against the gray Chicago skyline, voices rising in a chorus of defiance. Emily stood backstage, her heart pounding as she gripped Sarah's hand. The crowd, hundreds strong, chanted for equality, their signs bold with messages like "Healthcare for all" and "Love is not a diagnosis." Sarah, usually shy in crowds, was radiant today, her blonde hair catching the sunlight as she adjusted the microphone pinned to her sweater. Emily marveled at her strength, the way she transformed her pain into purpose. "You ready?" Emily whispered, brushing a stray lock from Sarah's face. Sarah nodded, her hazel eyes steady. "Let's do this." They stepped onto the stage, and the crowd roared. Emily spoke first, her voice carrying the weight of her legal training. "What happened to us at Mercy General wasn't just persona, it was a symptom of a broken system," she said, her words sharp and clear. "We're here to demand change, not just for us, but for everyone who's been turned away because of who they are." The crowd cheered, and Emily felt a surge of hope, tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. Sarah took the mic next, her voice softer but no less powerful. "I was humiliated in that hospital," she said, her hands trembling slightly. "But I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm proud to love Emily, and I'm proud to fight for our right to be treated with dignity." The crowd erupted, and Emily's throat tightened. She reached for Sarah's hand, their fingers intertwining as the cameras flashed. After the rally, they met with organizers from Equality Illinois, who were planning a statewide campaign to push for stronger anti-discrimination laws in healthcare. Emily offered her legal expertise, while Sarah volunteered to design promotional materials. They spent the evening in a cramped meeting room, surrounded by activists, their ideas sparking like wildfire. Carla, the trans nurse from Sarah's support group, joined them, her presence a reminder of the stakes. "This is personal for all of us," Carla said, her voice thick with emotion. Emily nodded, her mind already racing with strategies. But the high of the rally didn't last. That night, their apartment was vandalized. Red spray paint scrawled across their door, "Go to hell." Sarah gasped when she saw it, her hand flying to her mouth. Emily's stomach churned, but she pulled Sarah close, her voice steady. "They're scared of us," she said. "That means we're making noise." They reported the incident to the police, who took a report but offered little hope of catching the culprit. Emily spent the night scrubbing the paint off, her hands raw but her resolve unbroken. The next morning, Emily woke to a flood of emails. Their story had gone national, picked up by major outlets like CNN and the New York Times. Support poured in, but so did the hate. Sarah's phone buzzed with notifications, some from friends offering love, others from strangers spewing vitriol. Emily watched her closely, noting the way Sarah's shoulders tensed with each new message. "We can step back," Emily offered, her voice gentle. But Sarah shook her head. "If we stop now, they win." Emily threw herself into work, meeting with her firm's pro bono team to build a class action lawsuit against hospitals with records of discrimination. She spent hours poring over case law, her desk a mess of highlighters and coffee cups. Sarah, meanwhile, worked on their campaign, her sketches turning into powerful posters and social media graphics. One designated silhouette of two women holding hands against a hospital backdrop went viral, shared by celebrities and activists alike. Their evenings were spent together, a quiet counterpoint to the chaos. They cooked dinner, laughed over old memories, and planned their future. One night, as they sat on their couch, Sarah turned to Emily, her eyes serious. "What if this changes everything?" she asked. "What if we're always fighting?" Emily took her hand, her thumb tracing circles on Sarah's palm. "Then we fight together," she said. "Always." The next challenge came swiftly. A conservative group filed a countercomplaint against Emily, accusing her of defamation against Dr. Hensley. The claim was flimsy, but it dragged Emily into a legal quagmire. She spent days preparing a defense, her firm backing her fully. Mr. Grayson, her senior partner, clapped her on the shoulder. "You're shaking things up, Carter," he said. "Keep going." Sarah, meanwhile, faced her own battles. Her graphic design clients began pulling away, some citing personal beliefs. It stung, but Sarah channeled her energy into their campaign, her work gaining traction online. She started a blog, sharing stories from others who'd faced discrimination in healthcare. The response was overwhelming, hundreds of messages, each one a reminder of why they were fighting. As the weeks passed, Emily and Sarah grew closer, their love a lifeline. They attended more rallies, spoke at community centers, and met with lawmakers. The hospital incident had sparked something bigger, a movement they hadn't anticipated. But Emily couldn't shake the weight of it all, the hate, the vandalism, the constant pressure. She looked at Sarah, her anchor, and knew they'd face it together, no matter what came next. Winter settled over Chicago, blanketing the city in snow and silence. Emily and Sarah's apartment became a hub of activity, their dining table covered with legal documents, campaign plans, and Sarah's ever-growing sketchbook. The fight that began in a hospital waiting room had grown into something unstoppable. But it came at a cost. Emily's days were a blur of meetings and court filings. The class action lawsuit was gaining momentum, with more plaintiffs joining people like Carla, who'd been denied care, and a gay couple turned away from a rural clinic. Emily worked late, her eyes burning from hours at her laptop, but every email from a new plaintiff fueled her. She was building a case that could set a precedent, one that would force hospitals to confront their biases. But the counter-complaint against her lingered, a dark cloud. Dr. Hensley's lawyers were aggressive, painting Emily as a vengeful activist. It was nonsense, but it drained her energy. Sarah, meanwhile, was pouring her heart into their campaign. Her blog had become a platform for stories of discrimination, each post shared thousands of times. She'd started a podcast, her soft voice narrating the pain and resilience of others. Listeners sent messages of gratitude, but the hate mail kept coming too. One night, Sarah found a death threat in her inbox, its words so vile she couldn't read it aloud. She showed it to Emily, her hands shaking. Emily called the police, her voice calm but her heart racing. "We're not stopping," she told Sarah, pulling her into a fierce hug. "They don't get to scare us." But fear was a constant companion now. They installed a security system, their once carefree home now a fortress. Emily noticed Sarah's laugh wasn't as bright, her sketches a little less vibrant. She blamed herself, wondering if she'd pushed too hard. One evening, as they sat by their window watching snow fall, Emily took Sarah's hand. "Are we okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's eyes softened. "We're more than okay," she said. "We're us." The turning point came in December, when Emily was invited to testify before a state legislative committee on healthcare reform. It was a chance to push for laws protecting LGBTQ+ patients. She spent days preparing, her notes meticulous, her arguments airtight. Sarah designed a presentation to accompany her testimony, her visuals bringing the data to life. The night before the hearing, they rehearsed in their living room, Sarah playing the role of a skeptical lawmaker. They laughed, the tension easing for the first time in weeks. The hearing was packed, the room buzzing with reporters and advocates. Emily stood at the podium, her voice steady as she recounted their story. "Sarah and I were humiliated, but we're not victims," she said. "We're fighters, and we're here to ensure no one else endures what we did." She presented data, hundreds of cases of discrimination, backed by her firm's research. Sarah sat in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. The committee listened, some nodding, others stone-faced. Emily knew change wouldn't come easily, but she'd planted a seed. After the hearing, a reporter approached them, asking about their personal lives. Sarah hesitated, but Emily took her hand, smiling. "We're just two women who love each other," she said. "And we're fighting for a world where that's enough." The quote made headlines, and their story spread further. Donations poured in for their campaign, and Emily's firm offered more resources for the lawsuit. But the backlash intensified. Dr. Hensley appeared on a conservative talk show, claiming she'd been unfairly targeted. Her supporters launched a crowdfunding campaign, and Emily's inbox filled with threats. She shielded Sarah from the worst, but the strain was visible. Sarah's cough returned, a reminder of her still fragile health. Emily insisted on another doctor's visit, this time at a clinic recommended by Carla. The doctor was kind, thorough, and prescribed a new treatment plan. As they left, Sarah squeezed Emily's hand. "This is what it should have been like," she said. Back home, they planned their next steps. The lawsuit was moving to discovery, and Emily was buried in depositions. Sarah's podcast gained a sponsor, allowing her to focus on advocacy full-time. They were becoming a force, but the weight of it all tested their resilience. One night, as they lay in bed, Sarah turned to Emily, her voice soft. "Do you ever wish we could just run away?" Emily kissed her forehead. "Every day. But then I look at you, and I know we're exactly where we need to be." The holidays brought a brief respite. They spent Christmas with Sarah's family, who'd been supportive but cautious about the publicity. Sarah's mom hugged Emily tightly, whispering, "Thank you for fighting for her." It was a small moment, but it grounded them. They returned to Chicago renewed, ready for the next battle. The lawsuit was set for trial in the spring, and Emily was determined to win not just for them, but for everyone who'd been silenced. Spring arrived in Chicago, the city blooming with new life. But for Emily and Sarah, the fight felt like a marathon with no finish line. The trial for their class action lawsuit was weeks away, and the pressure was relentless. Emily's days were consumed with depositions, witness prep, and strategy sessions, her office a fortress of case files and coffee cups. Sarah, now a full-time advocate, balanced her podcast, blog, and campaign work, her sketches and words inspiring thousands. The discovery phase had been brutal. Dr. Hensley's legal team dug into Emily and Sarah's personal lives, twisting their activism into publicity stunts. Emily brushed it off in public, but privately, stung. She'd always been private, her love for Sarah's sacred space. Now, it was dissected in court documents and online forums. Sarah felt it too, her confidence shaken by depositions where lawyers questioned her lifestyle. But they leaned on each other, their love a shield against the noise. One morning, Emily found Sarah in their kitchen, staring at a letter from the state medical board. Dr. Hensley's license was under review, a direct result of Emily's complaint. It was a small victory, but it came with a cost. Hensley's supporters were rallying, painting her as a martyr. Emily hugged Sarah from behind, her chin resting on her shoulder. "We're getting to them," she said. Sarah nodded, but her eyes were distant. "I just want it to be over," she whispered. The trial prep intensified. Emily's firm brought in a co-counsel, a seasoned litigator named Rachel who specialized in civil rights cases. Rachel was a force, her sharp wit and encyclopedic knowledge of case law a perfect complement to Emily's passion. They spent hours strategizing, building a case that linked Dr. Hensley's actions to systemic failures in hospital oversight. Sarah contributed too, her visuals used to illustrate the human cost of discrimination. One chart, showing the number of LGBTQ+ patients denied care, left even Rachel speechless. The night before the trial, Emily and Sarah sat on their couch, a rare moment of quiet. Sarah's sketchbook lay open, filled with designs for a new campaign logo. Emily traced the lines of a drawing, two women embracing under a rainbow. "This is beautiful," she said. Sarah smiled, but her eyes were tired. "I want to keep going," she said, "but sometimes I feel like I'm drowning." Emily pulled her close, her heart aching. "We'll get through this," she promised. Together. The trial began on a rainy April morning, the courtroom packed with reporters, advocates, and curious onlookers. Emily took the stand first, her voice steady as she recounted the hospital incident. The defense tried to rattle her, questioning her motives. But Emily didn't falter. "I'm here because no one should be denied care for who they love," she said, her eyes locking with Sarah's in the gallery. The room was silent, the weight of her words palpable. Sarah testified next, her voice soft but unwavering. She described the humiliation, the fear, and the anger of being refused treatment in front of a crowd. "I felt invisible," she said, tears spilling over. "But Emily made me feel seen." The jury leaned forward, some visibly moved. Emily gripped the edge of her seat, her pride in Sarah overwhelming. The defense called Dr. Hensley, who claimed her refusal was a misunderstanding. But Emily's team was ready, presenting witness statements, hospital records, and Hensley's own social media posts. Rachel's cross-examination was surgical, exposing contradictions and bias. By the end of the week, the defense was scrambling, their case unraveling. Outside the courtroom, the world was watching. Protests gathered outside, both for and against Emily and Sarah. Supporters waved rainbow flags, while detractors held signs condemning them. Emily shielded Sarah from the worst, but the tension was suffocating. One night, after a long day in court, they escaped to a quiet diner, sharing a plate of fries. Sarah reached for Emily's hand, her smile small but genuine. "We're making history," she said. Emily nodded, her throat tight. "And we're doing it together." As the trial neared its end, Emily felt a shift. The jury's faces softened, their eyes lingering on Sarah during closing arguments. Rachel's final statement was a masterpiece, weaving their story into a call for systemic change. "This isn't just about one doctor," she said. "It's about a system that fails the most vulnerable. Emily and Sarah are fighting for all of us." The courtroom was silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Back home, they waited for the verdict, the days stretching endlessly. Sarah's health was stable, but the stress took a toll. Emily noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled when she thought no one was watching. They spent their evenings curled up together, talking about the Futuria house, maybe a dog, a life beyond the fight. But the trial's outcome loomed, a weight neither could ignore. The courtroom was a pressure cooker, the air thick with anticipation as the jury filed in. Emily sat beside Sarah, their hands clasped under the table, her pulse racing. 5 weeks of testimony, evidence, and raw emotion had led to this moment. And Emily felt the weight of it all, their love, their fight, their future resting on the verdict. The foreman stood, his voice steady. "We find in favor of the plaintiffs," he said, and the room erupted. Emily's breath caught, her eyes locking with Sarah's. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but her smile was radiant. Emily pulled her into a hug, whispering, "We did it." The jury awarded damages to the plaintiffs and recommended sweeping policy changes for Illinois hospitals, a landmark ruling that sent shockwaves through the media. Outside, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing as Emily and Sarah stepped into the sunlight. Rachel, their co-counsel, stood beside them, her grin fierce. "This is just the start," she said. The crowd of supporters cheered, rainbow flags waving, while a smaller group of detractors shouted from across the street. Emily ignored them, her arm around Sarah's waist, her heart full. The victory was bittersweet. Dr. Hensley's license was revoked, and the hospital faced fines and mandatory training. But the hate mail didn't stop, and Emily's firm warned her about potential appeals. Still, the ruling was a beacon, inspiring other lawsuits across the country. Emily and Sarah's story had sparked a movement, their names synonymous with change. They returned home exhausted but elated, their apartment a sanctuary. Sarah cooked pasta, her laughter filling the space as Emily recounted Rachel's courtroom theatrics. Over dinner, They talked about what came next. The campaign was growing, with invitations to speak at national conferences. Sarah's podcast had a waiting list of guests, and Emily's firm was expanding its pro bono division. But the personal toll was real. Sarah's health, though improved, required ongoing care, and Emily felt the strain of their public life. One evening, as they walked along Lake Michigan, Sarah stopped, her eyes on the horizon. "I want to marry you," she said, her voice soft but sure. Emily froze, her heart swelling. They'd talked about marriage before, but the timing had never felt right. Now, after everything, it was perfect. "Yes," Emily said, pulling Sarah into a kiss. The wind carried their laughter, a moment of joy amidst the chaos. They planned a small wedding, just family and close friends, set for the summer. Sarah's mom helped with the planning, her enthusiasm a balm for their wounds. Emily's firm threw them a party, Mr. Grayson toasting to their courage. But the fight wasn't over. The conservative group appealed the verdict, and Emily spent hours strategizing with Rachel. Sarah, meanwhile, launched a new campaign, Care for All, with merchandise and events to fund legal battles for others. The backlash continued. Their apartment was targeted again, this time with a brick through their window. Emily called the police, her voice shaking with anger, while Sarah stood silently, her eyes on the shattered glass. "We can't let them stop us," Emily said, but Sarah's silence worried her. That night, they lay in bed, Sarah's head on Emily's chest. "I'm tired," Sarah admitted, "but I'm not giving up." Emily kissed her forehead, her resolve hardening. They'd face this together, as always. The summer brought their wedding, a quiet ceremony in a garden overlooking the lake. Sarah wore a simple white dress, her blonde hair glowing in the sunlight. Emily, in a tailored suit, couldn't take her eyes off her. They exchanged vows, promising to love and fight for each other, no matter the cost. Carla, their friend from the support group, officiated, her voice warm with pride. The reception was filled with laughter, music, and hope, a reminder of why they fought. As they danced under the stars, Emily whispered, "We're unstoppable." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining. "Together," she said. The moment was perfect, but Emily knew the road ahead would be rocky. The appeal loomed, and their campaign was drawing more attention, both good and bad. But with Sarah by her side, Emily felt invincible. Back at work, Emily prepared for the appeal, her team bolstered by new allies. Sarah's campaign gained corporate sponsors, her designs plastered on billboards across Chicago. They were becoming a force, their love a symbol of resistance. But the threats didn't stop, and Emily hired a security consultant, her protective instincts in overdrive. Sarah, ever resilient, kept creating, her art a lifeline. As the appeal date approached, Emily and Sarah leaned on each other, their love stronger than ever. They were tired, battered, but unbroken. The world was watching, and they were ready to fight, hand in hand, for as long as it took. The appeal hearing was set for late summer, the Chicago courthouse a familiar battleground. Emily stood outside, her suit crisp despite the humidity, her hand clasped with Sarah's. The past year had tested them in ways they hadn't imagined, but their love had only deepened, a quiet strength that carried them through. Inside, the courtroom was quieter than the trial, the stakes no less high. The conservative group argued that Dr. Hensley's rights were violated, but Emily's team, led by Rachel, was relentless. They presented new evidence, testimonies from other patients, Hospital records showing a pattern of bias. Emily testified again. Her voice a blend of fire and precision. This isn't about one doctor, she said. It's about a system that lets hate go unchecked. Sarah sat in the gallery, her sketchbook open, capturing the moment in quick, sure strokes. The judge upheld the original ruling, a victory that echoed beyond the courtroom. The media frenzy was immediate, with headlines praising Emily and Sarah's courage. But the victory came with a cost. Their address was leaked online, and they moved to a new apartment. Their lives upended again. Emily hired a private security firm, her savings dwindling, but she refused to let fear win. Sarah, ever the optimist, decorated their new home with her art, turning it into a sanctuary. Their campaign, Care for All, was now a national movement. Sarah's podcast reached millions, her voice a beacon for those silenced by prejudice. Emily's firm opened a new division dedicated to civil rights, with Emily at the helm. They traveled the country, speaking at conferences and rallies, their story inspiring laws in 3 states to protect LGBTQ+ patients. But the hate persisted: online trolls, threatening calls, and a constant undercurrent of danger. One evening, as they sat in their new living room, Sarah turned to Emily, her eyes serious. "Do you ever regret this?" she asked. Emily shook her head, her hand finding Sarah's. "I regret the pain," she said. "But not the fight. Not us." Sarah smiled, leaning into her, and they sat in silence, the weight of their journey settling around them. The turning point came unexpectedly. A major healthcare network, shamed by the lawsuit's fallout, partnered with their campaign, funding training programs and policy changes. Emily and Sarah were invited to consult, their voices shaping the future of healthcare. It wasn't perfect. Change was slow, and some hospitals resisted, but it was progress. Sarah's designs were used in training materials, her art a reminder of the human cost of bias. As fall approached, they took a rare weekend away, escaping to a cabin in Wisconsin. The quiet was a balm, the lake outside their window a mirror for their thoughts. They walked hand in hand, their laughter echoing through the trees. Sarah sketched by the water, her pencil capturing the serenity, while Emily read case files, her mind never fully at rest. But in those moments, they were just Emily and Sarah, 2 women in love, dreaming of a softer future. Back in Chicago, they faced their biggest challenge yet, a congressional hearing on healthcare discrimination. Emily testified before lawmakers, her voice steady as she called for federal protections. Sarah's visuals accompanied her, projected on screens, bringing the data to life. The hearing was a turning point, with bipartisan support for a new bill. It wasn't law yet, but it was a start, a testament to their resilience. Their story ended not with a single victory, but with a legacy. Emily and Sarah became symbols of hope, their love a defiance of hate. They faced setbacks, legal battles, personal attacks, but their bond was unbreakable. Sarah's health stabilized, her laugh brighter than ever, and Emily's career soared, her firm a leader in civil rights law. In their new apartment, they hung a framed sketch from Sarah's book, a drawing of 2 women, hands clasped, standing tall against a storm. It was their story, their fight, their love. As they looked at it, Emily pulled Sarah close, her voice soft. "We changed the world," she said. Sarah nodded, her eyes shining. "And we'll keep changing it." Their journey wasn't over. There were more battles to fight, more hearts to reach. But they faced the future together, their love a light that no darkness could extinguish. In the end, it wasn't just about a doctor's refusal or a courtroom victory. It was about the power of love to transform, to heal, and to endure.